turn it over to Jim McDonald. Yeah, we'll do roll call first. Got Tim Armstrong. Here. Larry Nickel. George Ballard. Here. Joe Williams. Here. Jim McDonald. Here. Bill Young here.
Pledge allegiance.
Yeah. We'll do the Pledge of Allegiance now. Gentlemen, take your hats off. Everybody rise. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We'll turn it over to our attorney here for just a second to make some announcements.
If anybody wishes to speak at the public hearing, I need you to sign up now, or do you want to speak? So we're going to close the speaking list unless somebody wants to speak. Anybody? We're going to limit this the public hearing speeches to 3 minutes each. And it's a comment to the board. Right?
Yep.
We have Baker Tilly here, and we have, who is our accountants, and we also have Ice Miller here as well. It's yours, isn't it? Last chance. Wish to speak? Okay, I'm going to show the list is closed. Turn it back over to you. Back
All
to
right.
the minutes.
I trust everybody's had a chance to review the minutes of the January 12th meeting. Unless there's any corrections, I need a motion to approve.
So moved.
All right, George approved it. Do I have a second?
I second that.
Bruce McIntosh seconded it. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right, I've got the claims here, 1 through 10. Trust everybody's had a chance also to review them. Need a motion to pay those.
I so moved.
Is that Tim?
Yeah.
All right, Tim made the motion to, do I need a second?
Let's speak.
Second.
Need a second. George seconded. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. All right, thank you. Next, we'll go into the new business here, the confirmatory resolution, the Gibson County redevelopment. The declaratory was adopted January 12th. So this is going to be public comment.
So we need a motion to open the public hearing.
So moved.
Second?
Do I have a second?
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. So we'll open the public hearing. I'll call TMMI, Stacy Carr and Rick Azumi.
Thanks for having us. We'll just start by saying that as the old TIF was nearing expiration, Toyota Indiana was approached about the potential for a new TIF. So in support of the county, we are open to a new TIF, which will help the county and community with many projects, as Baker Tilly may show, as Jim referenced through his remarks earlier. Importantly, without a new TIF, the city of Princeton and Gibson County would not have sufficient funds to accomplish some of their infrastructure needs. So, for example, for the city of Princeton, lift stations, some pipe work, and then for Gibson County, from what we understand, potential road and traffic improvements.
Matt Eckerly.
All right, good evening. Do I need to be in the mic for recording purposes, or can I stand over there and drive my computer? What works best?
Where's Jason at?
I think you're okay standing by the computer.
Okay. I
Okay.
usually project pretty well, but if it starts becoming hard to hear me, please let me know. And as I present this information, what I would ask the redevelopment commission members, if you have questions as I'm presenting, feel free to stop me and we can dive in. I'm going to try to keep it high level, not dive too much into the weeds, but I understand there's some weedy questions and there might be some homework for me and Annika on the tail end of this. So again, my name is Matt Eckerly. I'm a principal with Baker Tilly. based out of Indianapolis. We have the privilege of serving as the financial advisor to the Gibson County Redevelopment Commission, have worked with, I know as a firm, we've worked with the Gibson County Redevelopment Commission for over 30 years. I've had the privilege of working with the Redevelopment Commission for only almost 20 years now. I'm joined here tonight by my colleague, Annika Sinekin. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to try not to spend too long in this presentation, but in this presentation we've included information on the impacts of the proposed Toyota allocation area. We have information on the history of the now expired Patoka Union Township allocation area. We have some historical tax rate and assessed value information on some of the overlapping taxing units in Patoka and Union Township. And then I also, something I've found really instructive over the years, is I've included some reference slides. And we do have copies of the presentation. If we run out of copies, we're happy to provide electronic versions to people who need them. But we've included some reference slides that are a little bit of tax increment finance and property tax 101, because we always find that important to cover in the context of these conversations, because the Indiana property tax system at times can be a little confusing to people, so we want to make sure that there's some good reference information included. So the estimated impact of the allocation area, I want to talk about a couple of things as it relates to this. The allocation area is located on the same physical geography as the now expired Patoka Union Township allocation area. So that expired at the end of 2025. That's important to keep in mind, because what that means is all of the assessed value, and it was over $700 million of eligible incremental assessed value in that old allocation area. The Redevelopment Commission, the county, no longer has the ability to capture that incremental assessed value. So that assessed value has been released into the property tax base and is now going to be in the property tax base of Patoka Township and Union Township into perpetuity. This is not an action to extend the capture of that assessed value. It can only capture the assessed value from new development that takes place within the allocation area after January 1 of 2026. So what we call the base assessment date, which is the assessment date that immediately precedes the establishment of the allocation area, that is going to be January 1 of 2026. So as the assessor's office is working on January 1, 26 pay 27 assessments, and those assessed values get certified by the auditor's office with the state of Indiana, that assessed value is going to be in the tax base of the overlapping taxing units. There is no ability of this redevelopment commission to take any of that away from the overlapping taxing units. So the property tax base of the overlapping taxing units is going to be set and not affected by the actions of the redevelopment commission. And then the redevelopment commission and these actions also don't have any direct bearing on the property tax levies of those overlapping taxing units. In Indiana, we operate on a fixed levy system where the state of Indiana controls each year how much you can increase your property tax levies by. The past few years, the authorization for the maximum levy increase has been 4% a year, which means whether you're Union Township, North Gibson Schools, City of Princeton, Gibson County, they cannot just set their property tax levies where they want them to be or just grow them in accordance with new development. They can only grow those controlled levy funds by a maximum of 4% collectively per year. And so when we're thinking about the interaction of TIF and the overlapping taxing units, it really happens on the assessed value side of the coin. And what that means is the redevelopment commission is capturing that eligible incremental assessed value that I referenced earlier. If that assessed value were not captured by the redevelopment commission and it still took place, that would grow the tax base. But those levies that are controlled are going to just be spread over a wider tax base. And so that puts downward pressure on the tax rates. So the way I've described this, and some of you might have been, there was a public hearing back in December for the Francisco Solar Project. I talked about this concept where really the way to think about it, if a project is happening without TIF, the property taxes it pays really don't represent new dollars to the overlapping taxing units. It's really, if they're paying $100,000, that's really $100,000 less than all the other taxpayers that overlap with that taxing district have to pay. So I think that's important because when we're talking about TIF, they're capturing, the redevelopment commission would capture this incremental assessed value. Toyota's gonna pay taxes, property taxes like everyone else in the county. In fact, if they weren't involved with the TIF establishment, they probably wouldn't even know they were in a TIF area. They just pay their property taxes as everyone else does. That they're not paying a special rate, a discounted rate, they're paying property taxes as everyone else does. The real effects of it are on the back end in the auditor's office. Those revenues that result only from the incremental value from the new investment, so not the existing facility as it is today, but from the new investment going forward, those revenues, and we work with the auditor's office every year to calculate those revenues, those get allocated on the back end to the redevelopment commission to then be deployed pursuant to state law. Does that make sense to everyone? I think that kind of setting the stage for some of these concepts is important in these conversations. So what we're working on now is, and why we're here tonight, one of the statutory required pieces of the process is the preparation of, we call it a tax impact statement. But basically, a document that summarizes the effects on the property tax rates, levies, and assessed values of the taxing units which overlap with the proposed allocation area. And that was distributed over a week and a half ago in accordance with state law. And what we do in this analysis is we isolate this, hold everything else constant, and look at if this project happens as a result of the TIF area being established, and one of the findings is that this project would not happen but for the establishment of the TIF. What is the effect on those property tax rates, levies, and assessed values of the overlapping taxing units? One thing I want to be clear with, and we've got it on the screen here, is we're still working with Toyota's tax team to quantify the exact assessed values that are going to be derived from this project. We know that there's investment happening in both Union and Patoka townships, but they're still working to better define what that looks like, and then as a result, we would work and figure out what's that revenue potential. And I know that also the county and the city of Princeton are working on defining how much is all this infrastructure that's necessary to serve the Toyota project, how much is all of that going to cost? And then we can figure out how does this TIF revenue need to be deployed. So as I stand here tonight, unfortunately I can't get into the details of how much and all that because we're still working on it. So for the purposes of this exercise, we're assuming an illustrative $25 million of assessed value, new assessed value in each taxing district, just for the purposes of this exercise. So that's what we've incorporated here, and I will also add that tonight, the redevelopment commission, or if you decide to table this, the redevelopment commission does not have to make a determination on passing through assessed value. That's something that's required on an annual basis on analysis of actual revenues and what's needed to service your obligations. So that's not something that I'm going to get into a whole lot tonight, though. We're going to talk about pass-through in a little bit. Does all this make sense? I know it's a lot of table setting. So we've got the $25 million in each taxing district. And then we're looking at three scenarios. We've got scenario one is today, certified 2026 property tax rates, levies, and assessed values. Scenario two represents the estimated impact if the allocation area is established and 100% of the incremental assessed value is captured. And then scenario three represents the estimated impact if the allocation area is not established and the new development does not take place as a result. Because again, one of the findings is that the new project would not be possible without the infrastructure that's being paid for with the tax increment revenues. So what we've looked at first is the Union Township taxing district. And you see the tax rates in each circumstance for the township as a whole, and that's all of the combined tax rates of all the taxing units within the township. And then we've also separated out the Fort Branch Union Township fire territory. And we've done that for a specific reason, and that's because that fire territory was established this year, or last year. Its first effective year is 2026. In 2022, the General Assembly changed the law and said that any tax rates associated with a fire territory created after 2022 cannot be captured for TIF purposes. So what that means is that the assessed value from any development within TIF areas in Union Township, that goes straight into the property tax base of the fire territory. So for all intents and purposes for the fire territory, TIF doesn't exist. They get the full benefit from the start of all the assessed value that comes into place. So that's something important to note, because what that means is that increase in tax base puts downward pressure on that tax rate to, in this illustration, to the tune of about $1.50 per $100 of assessed value. And then the fire territory also has a cumulative fire fund, which exists outside of the maximum levy. And that's one of the few funds where if they take the rate annually to hold that rate constant, they can actually see new revenue from the new assessed value. So from a public safety perspective and a fire protection perspective, they will get the immediate benefit of any TIF assessed value out in Union Township. Does that make sense to everyone? So that's the exception. The other exception, similar to this, but doesn't exist here in Gibson County, is any referendum-approved funds. Referendum-approved funds are also excluded from the TIF calculation. So if down the road, South Gibson or North Gibson decides to pursue a referendum, and I'm not saying they will, I'm just saying that that's something that could happen down the road, they would get the full benefit of any TIF captured assessed value in that referendum calculation. So that's important to note as well. So taking this a step further, I apologize for the small print on the screen. We're also looking at the property tax levies. And you see that in the three scenarios, everything but the, excuse me. What property tax? In every scenario, except for when you look at the fire funds, the rates and levies are unchanged, because this action does not take anything away from the property tax base that is already in the tax base. So if you're holding all else constant, and we know that every year assessed values change, property tax levies will change, there could be actions to set new cumulative rates, but to isolate the effect of this action, we hold all else constant. And so that's what we're showing in these three scenarios, that those levies are unchanged by this action. The only delta or difference that you would see is if this new development is constructed within the TIF, that the fire territory will see the full benefit. And again, these are certified to pay 26 rates and levies. Does anyone have any questions about them? Happy to take feedback. Moving on to the next, we also look at Patoka Township. Now, the difference in Patoka Township, you do have one cumulative fund rate, but that cumulative fire rate in Patoka Township is not a fire territory rate, so it is not excluded from the TIF calculation. So in all three scenarios, those tax rates are held constant. And then similarly, you don't see that same interplay in Patoka Township because they don't have the fire territory in place. So everything else is held constant in the three scenarios, whether the project happens or does not happen. Does anyone have any questions about the impact calculations and the concepts behind that? So I'm going to move on next to the history of the allocation area, of the prior allocation area.
Please proceed.
All right. So we thought that it would also be helpful to talk about, considering the new allocation area, contextualizing a little bit of the history of TIF with Toyota here in Gibson County. And so we put together just a high-level summary of the history. And so going all the way back to 1998 is when the first phase of the facility was done. We've got all the investment information. There was 10-year abatement of both real and depreciable personal property, and there was just south of $24 million in bonds that were issued to fund the incentive, which was a combination of infrastructure and direct incentive to Toyota. In '99, phase 2 was completed with an additional $530 million, more abatement. There's job expectations, and then the assessed values were expected to increase to about $78.9 million, and that's just of the real property component. In 2000, there was a second plant that started construction. In 2001, there were amendments made to state law that would permitted Toyota to enjoy the full value of the personal property tax abatements that it received. But there were limitations put in place on the abatements. One thing that I wanted to point out is 2007. So the original area was established in 95. Took some years to get everything constructed, debt had to be issued. Well, in 2007, the revenues reached a point where it allowed the county to do a couple different things. One, they were able to work with Toyota to refinance all the bonds that had been issued to date at more favorable terms. And it created the circumstance where there were sufficient revenues where Gibson County's Redevelopment Commission could start passing through assessed value, not revenue, assessed value to the overlapping taxing units. So about 12 years, 13 years after the allocation area was established, there was enough development that had taken place that allowed the Redevelopment Commission to negotiate an arrangement with Toyota where they were able to start passing through assessed value, allowing the overlapping taxing units to start seeing benefits, assessed value benefits from the project before the statutory life of 30 years was over. So you reached that point in 07. In 2012, there was another phase of investment that included some bonds being issued to fund the incentive in lieu of an abatement. And the documents for the 2012 bonds included provisions of a minimum pass-through amount. So it committed to the Redevelopment Commission to passing through a minimum of $128,777,999. And that was all based on the math at the time. I remember spending a lot of time on Excel with that one. But it allowed the Redevelopment Commission to pass through that minimum starting in 2012 as long as those bonds were outstanding. In 2017, revenues had risen to a level so that Toyota continued to invest, assessed value continued increasing, revenues increased with that, that instead of passing through the minimum, which equaled like 22, 23%, they started passing through 40% of the eligible incremental assessed value starting in 2018. And you make that determination every year by June 15th. And every year by June 15th, starting in 27, this Redevelopment Commission had made the determination to pass through 40% of incremental assessed value. Now, over the years, we had looked at different percentages. Every year, we would meet with North Gibson schools and walk them through, and so they could understand for their financial planning purposes. But starting in 2017, you beat the minimum and started passing through 40% of the minimum assessed value. And I will note that your process is there, and especially in terms of engaging with North Gibson schools. I use Gibson County all the time when I'm speaking around the state as an example of a county that does it the right way, and engaging with the overlapping taxing units, sharing information, and then being proactive with the pass-through. 2025, you had total eligible incremental assessed value of a little north of $757.5 million. So that the Redevelopment Commission could capture all $757.5 million of assessed value if it wanted to, continued to pass through 40%. So you passed through $303 million, and that was the final year, 2025. Allocation area expired at the end of 2025, and so the $450+ million of incremental assessed value that had been captured in 2025 became a part of the tax base of the overlapping taxing units. And the vast majority of that is in Patoka Township. So you're talking North Gibson Schools, Patoka Township, the Princeton Patoka Township Library, Gibson County, the Solid Waste District. So that is now a part of the assessed value tax base for all of those taxing units. Establishing a new TIP allocation area as is proposed does not extend the capture of what had previously been captured or go back and recapture it. All of that is done. You cannot access that assessed value. So you will only be capturing assessed value from additional investment that Toyota is going to be making in the future over and above that baseline. That makes sense to everyone? Now, one thing that the Redevelopment Commission has done a lot over the years, working very closely with the county commissioners and with other entities throughout the county, is starting in 2011, you had sufficient revenue where you could service the debt, and the debt had been issued to fund all sorts of infrastructure projects at the Toyota project site. You get enough revenues, and Indiana TIF law provides for enough flexibility where the redevelopment commission started evaluating what other projects need to get done in Gibson County that help benefit the Toyota allocation area, because that's a statutory test you need to meet, that encourage development in the county, and that really take some of the burden off the backs of the taxpayers and ratepayers that live here in Gibson County. And so, since 2011, there have been approximately $45.7 million in TIF revenues captured by the redevelopment commission, but spent on non-direct TMMI projects. That ranges from housing projects in both Princeton and Fort Branch, community and 4-H buildings out at the fairgrounds, library projects in Princeton, Fort Branch, and Oakland City, YMCA and Fort Branch Recreation Center projects, utility improvements out at I-69 and State Road 64, county ambulances, turn lane for North Gibson schools, other county road projects, city and town wastewater and water improvements, and there's a new animal service building being built currently as well. And all of these gentlemen can speak to the specifics of these projects much better than I can. I just know that I get calls and emails and say, okay, we've got another project that the commissioners have sent our way, how do we cash flow this? And we would update our cash flows accordingly. So these are projects that if they had not been funded with Toyota TIF, Gibson County, the city of Princeton, the town of Fort Branch, other municipal entities would have had to find other resources to use to fund these projects. Then we also wanted to show, you know, the TIF area expired by law last year, at the end of last year. What did the tax rates and levies look like in Patoka Township before and after the expiration? And, you know, $450 million of assessed value, and obviously, again, other things happen, so this is not 100% attributable to Toyota, but $450 million increase in assessed value is something that's material. The tax rate for Patoka Township went down by almost 56 cents. And I know that there were some taxing unit specific decisions that impacted that as well, but that assessed value did put a lot of downward pressure on tax rates in Patoka Township. Median homeowner in Patoka Township is going to be paying about $3,000 less this year. Again, holding all else constant, I can't speak if their assessed value trended up independent of this. Obviously, it's different, but if their tax rate is, or their assessed value is constant from 25 to 26, they would see a decrease of about $420 in tax liability. I misspoke. The net assessed value, we thought that was important to point out as well. A lot of people have heard a lot about the property tax reform that was passed last year, Senate Rule Act 1. One of the provisions in SEA 1 is a new deduction regime for homestead residential property. What the net effect of this new deduction regime is going to be, and it's implemented pay 26 through pay 31, it's going to increase the amount of automatic homestead deduction that homeowners get, which is going to drive down their assessed values. So that first year phase-in is reflected here. And we also wanted to include a summary of in graphic form, the historical incremental assessed value going back to 2011. Back in 2011, the incremental assessed value, so again, that's the assessed value that the redevelopment commission could have passed, was approximately $552.1 million, increased to approximately $757.5 million in 25. And you see that red bar on top represents the amount of pass-through, which starting in 2018 was about 40% of the eligible incremental assessed value. Also wanted to include the historical tax increment distribution. So this is the amount of Toyota property taxes that got allocated to the redevelopment commission. Went from about $6.1 million in 2011 to the final year just south of $10.5 million. And so over the years, been used for projects, debt service payments, et cetera. I think at the end. Also wanted to include some historical tax, assessed value and tax rate information. This is more for reference, but just showing the different units in the county. You see the general trend line up of assessed values. Gross assessed values for 2026 aren't available yet, so apologies for not having that. But the trend line has been tax rate actually going down for the county unit. Union Township, the jump in tax rate from 25 to 26 is the fire territory. That changes the calculation of taxes, allows them to capture more for fire protection. Patoka Township went down a bit from 25 to 26. South Gibson, and the big jump was also when the Princeton-Patoka Township fire territory was dissolved, and they had to rework the tax rates for that. South Gibson schools, and then North Gibson schools we are also showing. The libraries. And then, this is really hard to read on the screen, I apologize for that, but one of the things I like about this slide is you look and see, we talked about all of the shifts in assessed value and everything, especially from 22 or 25 to 26. But even though there's such a large jump in the county, in North Gibson schools, and the Princeton-Patoka Township Public Library, they're only getting 4% levy growth. So that all $400+ million assessed value growth does not equal, just some large amount of revenue growth, because they are subject to those levy controls. And the state had set the levy at 4% from 25 to 26. And then after that is the reference information I mentioned at the top. So happy to answer any questions that any of you gentlemen may have.
4.98 growth,
What's that?
4.98.
Well, the 4 points, so from year to year, there could be specific things for like, the school corporation or others. Oh yeah, for this one, it was 5% it was 5% from 22 to 23, and then the state, the General Assembly capped it at 4% by law for 25, 25 and 26. Sorry. Are there any questions that folks have? Jim, you wanna-
So, does the commission have any questions for Matt?
Clarification on the projects that were funded, non-TMMI projects that were funded with TIF money, the Owensville REH wasn't on there, but I think all the other stuff is accurate.
Oh, okay. Well, we put Full Branch sewers under cities and towns, so.
Yeah, we tried to be general on some of it.
But lots of projects that wouldn't have otherwise happened or would have been a major impact on those taxing entities other things.
And we had, I think Fort Branch Library was mentioned under libraries, and
Fort Branch, Princeton,
and then the teen center is mentioned as well. If I could find it.
One clarification, basically a snapshot's taken every January 1 by the assessor. Okay. And the first one that will determine how much is in this TIF district that passed would be on 1/1/2027.
Yeah, that's a great question, just for those of you who can hear. So every year, the assessor's office is required by law to do assessments on January 1st. And in Indiana, you pay taxes 1 year in arrears. So what Kim did, January 1st to 26, you would pay your taxes on that assessment in the 2027 tax year. That's gonna be the base assessment year for this allocation area if it's established. So really, you're not gonna start capturing until you get incremental value on the January 1 of 27 assessment payable in 2028. So we're not gonna know actual assessments for your first possible revenue year until early summer of 2027. So it's one of those things to keep in mind with TIF is that it's not something where you take an action and boom, you start getting revenues right away. There's a process that goes with it. That's a great question.
Any other questions from the commission? Larry?
Matt, the Toyota battery plant out here, it looks like it's pretty well built. Is that going to be included on the base as of January 1, 26, or?
I can't speak to how it's being assessed January 1 of 26, but whatever is assessed by the assessor's office in the ascribed value January 1 of 2026 is going to be in that base assessed value. I don't have the data to say definitively what that would be at this point in time.
Another question, I see a lot of taxpayers out here. How does this TIF district affect the tax rate for the county? There's a pretty good percentage of this capture money would be available to Gibson County, about 25 or 30%. And how does that how does this affect the taxpayers of the county?
So, if this project were constructed without the TIF, really any project, that increase in assessed value would put downward pressure on tax rates. So, I mean, really what you see from 25 to 26 shows the impact of the prior one expiring. You know, you used it to attract the investment. It expired by statute. That release of the $400+ million of assessed value put downward pressure on the tax rates, and it saved the taxpayers, primarily in Patoka Township, money as a result. So for this project, capturing what's being built, you're not capturing anything that's already in the ground, so
Right.
you're not taking anything out of the tax base from this action.
But the new funds, as far as the growth, the next 25 years, I won't be, the problem I see is that it don't affect it, but the problem is it don't affect it.
Oh, I see what you're saying, I apologize. So, yeah, during the time where the allocation area is in place, that incremental assessed value, if it is captured, that, the overlapping taxing units are not going to see the benefit of that assessed value growing their tax base, because the money that assessed value is being captured by the redevelopment commission, and those funds used to fund the projects in question. So yes, you are, during that period of TIF capture, postponing that assessed value benefit to the overlapping tax units. I believe that's your point.
But it could be potentially quite a bit.
Depending on how the facility builds out, there could be orders of magnitude. We just don't know the information at this time. And then, the redevelopment commission is going to continue to be required by law to each year look at how much are we expecting to capture in the next year, how much do we need to fund bonds or to fund projects that we have committed to, and then they will have the ability to make that determination, which they have in the past, to pass through the assessed value to perhaps accelerate the benefit to the taxing units and the taxpayers of the county.
And at this point, it's assumed that the project would not move forward without the capture of the TIF revenue, correct?
Yeah, it's our understanding that the capture of the revenue to fund the infrastructure projects out there are necessitated, or are required in order for Toyota actually to be able to build this facility. Now, I can't speak to Toyota's decision-making, but that's the finding that's made here, and that's our understanding.
Right, so you
How
want,
was that determined?
Larry has another question.
Hold on, Larry, you'll get your
I'm sorry.
time here.
I'm
You'll
sorry, go ahead.
first here. You'll get, go ahead.
How is that determined, whether or not it's feasible? It seems like that there's been considerable amount of tax incentive in this first 30 years to get industry in, but now they're here, and it seems like, how can I put this? Taxpayers, I'm speaking of several taxpayers that have come to me, they don't understand as much TIF revenue to build their infrastructure and everything, as well as the tax abatements. The purpose, by definition probably, but the purpose of a TIF district is to encourage industry to come in to a Blythe or undeveloped area. And I don't think this is really an underdeveloped or blight area. And how is it determined that the company wouldn't be just as well off to pay their own infrastructure and possibly if history repeats itself, they'll be coming and asking for tax abatement before it's said and done. And then with the Indiana 25 with tax code and everything, before long, there isn't going to be enough revenue to actually worry about if these tax laws from Indiana don't get changed. But we won't know that for another month.
Yeah, well, on this project itself, again, we rely on, the county and the city's evaluation of the infrastructure out in that area, and then also on Toyota's, kind of what they're telling in terms of this is what we need to make the site viable for development in this next phase. In terms of kind of specific findings of blight or anything like that, I know Heather is somewhere back there. I know that's more of a statutory question. I don't know if you have any color to add in terms of that specific question, Heather.
Yeah, I would just note that you're totally correct that when the TIF statutes first came in place in Indiana, they were very much focused on blight, but now it's really much more of a focus on economic development, and those statutes have changed since they were originally passed, and now there's a major focus on economic development. And in the declaratory resolution that was adopted by the Redevelopment Commission, all of those necessary statutory findings were already made.
Thank you, Heather.
So we'll call the next speaker up, and Matt and Heather.
Did you have a question at the end? I'm sorry. You had-
Me?
Yeah.
I'm not on the commission, I'm
Oh,
sorry.
okay. Oh.
I know Heather and I know,
Okay,
like
sorry.
Jason's similar, yeah.
So we'll call Roy Lynch, if you want to speak. Roy, do you want to speak, or you want to wave?
Timer or?
Yeah,
That's what punctuality is. Like I said, everybody's
Just,
gonna be limited to 3 minutes.
public comment, if you don't mind.
I'm Roy Lynch, I'm just a taxpayer here in Gibson County. About 30 years ago, I believe Gibson County taxpayers cost them tens of millions of dollars in benefits to bring Toyota in here. And the TIF district since then, like he said, has done these projects, $45 million worth. But he's not telling how much is spent on Toyota's infrastructure and for Toyota. Like 13, 14 million for the parking lot, lighting, roads, I don't know what all, sewage. So, with that, which would have been captured, this TIF project took, you could have done all those projects plus however many more, built a new jail, completely paid for without a new tax, more than like the new safety tax we've got. Probably could have paid for that. So, anyway, all you guys is here to supposedly represent taxpayers of Gibson County. So, hopefully that's what you'll do. Now, the TIF district has done its purpose, it helped Toyota, so it's time to help the Gibson County taxpayers. In the same way the tax abatements that outside businesses come in and get, that's money that should have been into the general fund to the taxpayer. Everybody here pays taxes. We have to pay taxes on our house. If we own a little land, we pay taxes. People that have businesses in the county, don't matter how big, how small, they pay their share of taxes. So, everybody else should too. Doesn't matter who they are, solar companies, whoever comes in after tax
Thank you, Roy. Sam Weiss? Sam?
Good evening. My name is Sam Weiss. I'm a taxpayer, citizen of Union Township, Gibson County. I want to start off by saying this whole process has clearly been rushed. I came here in December, you were all here. I asked about the TIF district, what your thoughts were on it. You blew me off and said, there's nothing to see here, effectively. Now we're here at a public meeting, and we're already trying to push this thing through. This nice man, wherever he went right here, said, we don't even know what the dollar amount is yet. We don't even know what the infrastructure needs are. We don't know what the value of the plant is. How can you agree to something when you don't know the dollar impact? You're signing us up for a 25-year blank check. You don't even know what the dollar amount is here. Then he mentioned this too, the but-for clause. The Indiana TIF law says you have to have the TIF district can only be created if it is required for that development to happen. These guys said, you know, we need to have it in order to do the development. Sounds like the battery plant's already built, largely. It's not been explained on any of the documents. It's never been stated here in terms of real impact, why they can't build it without this TIF district in place. So it's been stated simply as a matter of fact. Nobody's actually come forward and said, here's why. Next point, and I think this is a big one. The TIF district, for Indiana law, and you can back me up on this if I'm wrong, says the TIF district can't jeopardize the health and well-being of the citizens of the county. We're talking about a battery plant, toxic chemicals. I have nothing against Toyota. I drive a Sienna. I love it. But we're talking about a battery plant that has toxic chemicals. We have no idea for the next 5, 10, 15, 50 years what the impact's going to be on the soil, the air. God forbid this thing goes up in smoke. Anybody that's in the smoke plume, you kiss their property goodbye. I'm within a mile and a half, 2 miles by the way the crow flies, Toyota. God forbid that thing goes up in flames and smoke goes my way. Forget everything I've been over the last 5, 6 years. And just the last thing I'll say, and this nice man over here said it too. You guys, as I understand it, you're appointed by the commissioners, you're appointed by the county council. You represent the citizens of this county. You represent the people that are here in this room that are trying to tell you today that this is not something we want. We're tired of the big business handouts. We're tired of being sold out to big business. Again, we love Toyota. We have nothing against Toyota, but they don't need our handouts in order to function. It's time, as he said, it's time to go to the taxpayers' phone once in a while. I know it doesn't affect our property taxes directly, but money's fungible. And he even said the money, our tax bases, our tax bills would go down if it wasn't for this. So that's what I'm here to say. It's not what we want as taxpayers.
Thank you. Randy Hall?
Well, this man here, he did a pretty good speech, but his figures was not right on a lot of the tax things, because in Patoka Township, we got all them solar panels. People around there's got all them solar panels, and they're right there in front of their yard, right alongside their yard, the back behind their house and everything. Their taxes should be going down because of the simple fact of all the solar panels. And there's probably over 1,700 acres, 1,800, I don't know how many, but it's a lot of them. So your tax dollars for the solar panels is gonna go down because of the simple fact is the state says they're gonna give them a tax break on the property taxes if you put solar panels on your property. That's what it said. And so since you did that, and that man he didn't include all of that in his speech about what, so the people around there, and now we got it around, it's gonna be around Francisco, it's the same thing. Because we're gonna have all them people's houses right around there, you wouldn't wanna buy a house around that solar panels. maybe 76 billion dollars. Because they're hauling it in and out, they had to haul the dirt, they had to do all this, and you have to have fire department, special equipment. You just can't put water on that battery plant, you can't do it. It takes high dollar equipment. It takes foaming, it takes training, it takes suits, it takes everything. And you can't just say, okay, we're gonna get one from, we'll just have the hazmat team from Evansville to come up there. You can't. You have to have it, you gotta short-wind it, and you gotta act now. So the fire department's gonna have this. And that you're looking at a lot of money for this battery plant. Plus, there's a daycare so close to that battery plant. This is another issue, health issue, and I even talked to the state of EPA and all that, and they said there's gonna be stiff guidelines that they're gonna have to do just because there's a daycare close. Because it does put off toxic fumes. And then the reason why our taxes is high is because we got the solar panels, and we got all this TIF money going out for Toyota, and since we got all this going out, because our tax, we have so much revenue in this county. We have more revenue, we should have more revenue than Vanderbilt County even. We should never have no problems with our taxes going up. Our taxes should be lower, because the more structure you have, infrastructure and businesses and farmers, they pay for that taxes, and we put a lot of money into taxes, so that makes our taxes cheaper because of Toyota and all that. Because Toyota just owns everything we got in town anyway. You can't use the library where they got the Toyota, it says Toyota on there, you can't go in there and sit in that room. The YMCA, it says Toyota on it. The fairgrounds, that's a county property. Well, you know, and then you want to give, like, they wanted to give, they left out East Gibson about so they could use the YMCA, get a discount for YMCA. The employees, they did it for Princeton. So, oh, no, can't do nothing for East Gibson, they're just out of luck.
Your time, Randy.
And then, so all this is going to play, and you guys gotta think about this. I mean, we have a very, very toxic thing going on in our county. I cannot even believe we would even consider such a toxic thing in the battery. There's so much regulations and stipulations with this, it's unbelievable.
Thank you, Randy. Phil? Phyllis Ernst? Phyllis?
My name is Phyllis Ernst, and I am the Patoka Township trustee. We were able to attend a meeting that was put on by different entities. Jim McDonald called it the Redevelopment Commission, and there was quite a few of
Phyllis.
And I think
Sure.
the answer to your questions, Phyllis, is those are all yes answers to that. I mean, obviously, the 100% capture, it doesn't have to be that way. The length of the district doesn't have to be that time frame. So the timing of the pass-through, if we did it, I mean, obviously, it's designed to capture what the costs are for the initial increment expenditures. So, good questions, good questions.
Jessica Kramer?
Good evening. I'm Jessica Kramer. I'm the Union Township trustee. I, along with Phyllis, have pretty well the exact same questions. And the other question that I have is, are we going to give them a tax abatement if they come back for that after this TIF? I did just establish the fire territory. I do want to say that that was done in purpose of this exact reason. That is one of the main reasons why we went after that. Not only that, but we're trying to staff a station for calls and increased calls that we are continually getting. Increased employees, increased wrecks, increased fires, increased all kinds of services that we are seeing daily. My men all have jobs that they work, you know, just like all the rest of us during the day. They're not available to go take a call when somebody's having a heart attack at Toyota, or had somebody get hurt at the battery plant or wherever. So I have a lot of questions in regards to that. And I think the 50 million is like, that's a real hard thing, because I know this is way more than 50 million we're talking about. The previous, amount given when it was announced was for $1.4 billion. So 50 million is a far cry from 1.4 billion. And then the percent of employees staying here in Gibson County. Because when those employees leave, they take their tax dollars and they head back to their home state, to wherever they're going, to their home county. They're not staying here in Gibson County. Somewhere between 20 and 25% is what we've kind of told, is what we're thinking. So that's a big issue for us as well, and just whether or not this actually has to happen to, and then obviously there's a lot of bills going on right now that could eliminate us townships, and I think that needs to be taken into consideration as well. If these townships aren't here, it's all going to the county. There's going to be a whole bunch of things at the end of this session, I think, that come out. So I think holding off on this at least till March is a very wise decision. Thank you.
Brian Hirsch?
Thank you for letting me speak a little bit. I came here basically to learn, and I think I heard Mrs. Carr say that Toyota was approached by the county on this. Is that correct?
I can't speak for the commissioners.
Okay. And that's another question. You guys don't vote this in, right? I mean,
What's that?
does this committee right here vote this in?
We would vote in the confirmatory resolution, yeah.
So would the commissioners ultimately?
The commissioners have always been economic development, Gibson County Economic Commissioners. They're the ones that put projects together and they send them to us.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
So, yeah, I guess my question is, do the commissioners actually approve this or vote on this to approve?
Heather?
The commissioners already took action approving the declaratory resolution.
We did the footprint, right?
Correct.
No footprint, but as far as, I was here at that meeting when they did that, and Chuck said, we're only here to approve the footprint, and then I just didn't know, at that point, do they have another vote on it or something that,
There's no other vote, is there?
No.
so it's gonna be, okay,
For the commissioners, yeah.
okay, well.
And then it goes to the county council.
Okay, no, I was kind of surprised they weren't here to hear our comments too, but anyway, another question I did have, I heard that, if the TIF is passed, then more taxes are paid than not. Is that true? You said
Yeah.
So, if it's established, then you're locking in the assessed value for that geography at current rate. So what they're paying over and above on new investment of what they're paying now, that gets allocated to the redevelopment commission.
Okay, so it would have, what you're saying is it would be more than if it didn't pass.
So if it didn't pass, you know, and again, one of the findings is that without the TIF and the infrastructure that's gonna be funded, this project isn't viable. But if the project were to be constructed without the TIF, or any development in Gibson County were to be constructed without TIF, that increase in assessed value would put downward pressure on tax rates. So that doesn't mean that there's new dollars going to the taxing units. What that means is their levies, which are relatively fixed, are spread over a larger tax base, so that puts downward pressure on tax rates.
Okay. Let's see. I guess that's my main questions, and then, just for information, I mean, we talked about that with downward pressure, but I just looked up some, I'm a farmer and have land in both Union Township and Etoka Township, and, fair farm ground 25 years ago, when Toyota came, I had, it was $13.62 an acre, and this year it's 45 an acre, so that's 232% increase. So, that's good for itself, but it seems like, you know, probably a lot of farmers in this room, and it might be some of the reasons we just don't understand. We're kind of like,
Ken Yocum? Ken? Oh, there you go.
I appreciate Toyota's initial investment in the county, but my question is, I think if, you know, our unemployment rate's 2.2% or whatever, it seems like we've saturated the labor market. How much more do we want them to grow? You know, how much, encourage them to expand when we don't have the people to supply the jobs for them, especially when we get to that election season. Thank you.
Thank you. Randy Kiesel?
Good evening, and thank you guys for allowing us to speak. I also want to thank you guys for being on the commission. Nobody likes to be retarded, and thank you for doing your job. I would ask this commission to reject doing a TIF district. I think it's the wrong tool and the wrong time. 30 years ago, wonderful tool, wonderful time, but now it's not. Toyota's had an opportunity to mature, and I can assure you, I'm comfortable that if they choose to do something, Gibson County is not gonna make or break it. As a company, they're well valued more than what ours can do, and probably the state of Indiana. So, what I don't understand is why we're having this hearing tonight from this commission, when our county commissioners and our county council, who appoint you guys, kind of duck their responsibilities. That's what
not Toyota's fault, that's our blessing, right? But as a county, there are dust to fix, it's for us to deal with. So I think our timing's wrong. I think it's time that they pay, just like everyone else does, into the general fund, and our county councilmen and our commissioners do their job and appoint those taxes appropriately. You guys get your hands tied by special projects. Then we got municipalities fighting over which project's more valuable. I got some pretty ugly stories I can share about how the little guy gets muffled out. Understood, they're important to our county, and please don't take this as we don't appreciate that. That's not it. We gotta take care of ourselves. And as a family community, we gotta see their all bills get paid, not just special ones. So I ask you guys, this is a government that's run for the people, by the people, and of the people. You're our elected people. Having silly guys like me stand up here and try to talk, I'm nervous as a cat, and I know I'm undereducated. I don't know what I'm doing. But I know right from wrong. And as a county, as a government, Toyota's bigger than Gibson County, understood. Bigger than Indiana, I presume. But it's still having our government, that's their job, is to help us, the common people, take care of our county. So please, do your job, and again, I want to thank you for putting up with the heat.
Thank you, Randy. Bob Reinhardt? You want to speak? Okay. Grant? Schwarzentrooper? Would you like to speak?
Good evening, how are you? My name's Grant Schwarzenegger. I know many of you from just different efforts in the past, and to quote, Yogi Berra, here's my page, I'll move all over it. I think the item that the earlier gentleman was looking for is the, as it relates to downward pressure. In common parlance, that would mean it gets lowered, correct?
Yeah, holding all else constant, yes, it would lower.
And so to answer that question, within 56 cents that dropped off the certified rate, which is approximately 32%, that dropped when this TIF district expired in December.
Correct.
Okay. So, but for this specific district, the taxpayers have a 32% lower rate, correct?
Are you talking about, and is it okay?
Yeah, yeah.
So are you talking about, but for the proposed or the existing? Because this is showing the effect.
I'm just talking about page 13.
Yeah.
If it had not expired, the rate would be that which was on the left, correct?
Generally speaking, yeah.
So because it expired in December, after 30 years, it's that second column, correct?
Yeah, generally speaking, other things play into that, but yeah.
So that's the downward pressure you're referring to? Okay. So the decision to move ahead with this project, and I didn't exactly catch what the project was, which would have to be defined in the resolutions. Can anybody tell me what the project is?
There's a wastewater for the city of Princeton. That city of Princeton handles the wastewater from Toyota.
So the but-for causation, though, but for this, the project doesn't proceed?
The city of Princeton couldn't afford the project, but for the project. County's got roads and infrastructure as far as stormwater and traffic signals.
Correct me if I'm wrong, is it not that, but for whatever the case may be, Toyota doesn't expand, correct?
Yeah.
That's the calculus.
Yeah.
Okay. I just want to make sure I understand the but-for causation.
That's
Because-
right, but for that, we wouldn't see the increase in AV that we expect from Toyota.
Okay, and what is the expected AV increase?
We're still defining that together with the Toyota folks. We use $25 million in each taxing district to illustrate the concepts we've been talking about tonight, but we don't have the actual values pinned down quite yet.
So perhaps it's fair to say that the but-for causation could use some tightening up.
financing standpoint that's been defined. There's been no TIF pledge amount pledged to Toyota or to the repayment of any bonds. It would be premature for all of those conversations. What we're talking about is simply the creation of an allocation area.
Is it fair to say that it would make sense to pump the brakes on this in general?
Absolutely. I'd say it's fair to say that we're following the proper statutory process, and this is the point for the public hearing, which seems entirely appropriate because the other steps that are required to be taken prior to this public hearing have in fact been taken.
And are we simply, we reactivating the former one?
No.
Okay. I'm gonna read from the newspaper, it's a direct quote. This was a necessary step in the process to have the commissioners approve all these steps and take these certain items within the timetable. It was recommended that the best thing would be to just reactivate the former one.
Reactivation is an incorrect way to phrase it, I'd say, because of everything Matt explained with regard to the base assessment date being reset and all of the funds that are in the base flowing through to the overlapping taxing units.
These aren't my words, these are Commissioner Chuck Lewis' words in the weekend edition of January the 24th and 25th. So that specific request of the commissioners, which was to, I guess, reactivate the former TIF, which we couldn't simply reactivate a former TIF, right? We can't go past 30 years, is that correct?
Correct, and at this point, the statute has changed, so you can't go past 25 years for this sort of allocation area.
It's my belief, just looking at the public information, that at least one commissioner that voted yes had the understanding that he was simply reactivating the former TIF. I think there's been mistakes in the process. I think that we need to tighten up some but-for causation, and I appreciate the time. Thank you.
Thank you. That's our last speaker, so I need a motion to close the, oh, you want to speak? What, you have a question?
I want to speak.
He wants to speak.
3 minutes also.
I got permission.
Yeah, well, same time limits, same time limit.
Communications. That's the name of the game. This all started sometime last year, and I don't know who was behind it and whatnot, but I've been on the redevelopment commission for 5 years, and I've got the minutes from the last 5 years on my they needed help funding, history repeats itself, they're gonna be coming and asking for a tax abatement. I would be a good vehicle instead of this plan. Because this thing, it's not just about infrastructure. When we was told that the only thing we're doing is having the existing footprint, that's just the beginning of it. It says in this 2026-1 document, there isn't even another document to really sign, it's just 2 pages that we're gonna sign. And I tried to tell people that that document is the most important document. It says this board, and all they have to do is make an amendment, and they can expand the footprint to whatever they want. And it not only is for infrastructure, as for acquisition of ground, it says it right there in the resolution.
30 seconds, Larry.
So anyway, I think we need to reconsider this. If we do anything, we need to rescind it. And the county council supported by giving them enough money. We shouldn't even be on private property. Toyota, we're getting on their property and we shouldn't be on their property. So anyway, I think county council is, we need to communicate all the stakeholders and get this worked out. But we should not amend, should not sign this resolution because it's got too many teeth into it that I think.
All right, I need a motion to close the public hearing. So, motion, do I have a second?
I second.
Who seconded it? All in favor, say aye. 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 Opposed, same sign.
Action.
I'd like to, make just a couple little comments. One, I want to thank everybody for taking their time out of their lives to be here tonight. I think it's important that we hear the community. I mean, I like to hear what everybody has got to say. The 11 people that got up here and spoke and give us their opinions, that's great. That's what we want to hear. Larry said communicate. That's exactly right. That's what we want to hear. That's why we're here, to hear what everybody has to say on this matter. So, listening to a lot of the comments and thinking about it, I'd like to make a motion that we table this till our March meeting, which is March the 9th, right here at 6 o'clock, and give us time as the redevelopment commissioners to think about this, listen to other people. Maybe there's some people that would like to talk that maybe didn't want to get up in front of a crowd and voice their opinion. You know, that I understand that totally. So that's my motion.
All right, I have a motion on the table as stated. Do I have a second?
Close the meeting.
No.
Public
No, sir.
hearing.
No,
Public
sir.
hearing.
Public hearing.
Second.
Okay, Tim seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right, thank you.
Old business.
Yeah, we don't, nothing, Mr.
South
Knapp said he
Gibson.
didn't have nothing to speak on there in the
Mr.
teen
Knapp.
center. He's okay.
Do you have anything for the South Gibson?
I don't have anything other than I just wanted to mention to you that Jim is running every day this month. So we've had a lot of people come back and start to use the gym. So
Great.
that should
Good.
all-
Good deal.
So how far along are we now as far as,
We're real close, we're waiting on 4 basketball goals to be installed and cabinets for the class jackets, and that should pretty much do everything.
great,
But those things are behind schedule on being built.
yeah, okay, thanks, Bill.
Thank you.
I don't think there's anyone here from the Gibson County Animal Shelter also, so I'll take a meeting to adjourn, or a motion to adjourn.
I'll make that motion.
Bruce made the motion. Do I have a second?
Second?
George seconded. All in favor, say aye. 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 Opposed, same sign. Thank you. Thanks, everybody, for